I'd like to call to order the February 6, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Education of Homewood School District 153. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bosch?
Here.
Mrs. Buffet? Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Here.
Mrs. Haddehorst?
Here.
Mr. Booth?
Here.
Mrs. Marks?
Here.
6 present.
Ms. Buffet is out of town on a scheduled family issue. Otherwise, she would be here tonight. We have approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of January 9th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections to that set of minutes?
Yes, a correction under long-term substitute for Sue Fordyce should be December 19th, 2022 versus 2021.
Thank you. Any other additions or corrections?
No.
All right. Is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we have future dates.
Good evening, everybody. Just a reminder that a change from our previous calendar, we are going to be out of school on Monday, February 13th. That's 1 week from today, in celebration of Lincoln's birthday rather than President's Day, which is the following Monday. So that's a change from what we've done historically. So no student attendance on Monday, February 13th. And then we have an early dismissal on Wednesday, March 1st. And then Pulaski Day, Monday, March 6th, is a Staff Institute Day. So no student attendance on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any presentations tonight?
We do not.
Okay, I would just like to introduce everyone to our school district attorney, John Izzo, who's up at the table with us tonight. And we are going to start with audience participation. And I know many of you have come to address the board tonight. I want to explain to you the process that we use. We hope that you've signed in, and when you come to address the board, we would like you to come up and speak into the microphone, and please state your name and address. We would like you to speak for a limit of up to 5 minutes. It doesn't mean you have to use the whole 5 minutes, but that is the limited amount of time that you have to speak, and each person can address the board once. And I think we have a sheet up there that we asked you to sign in on if you wanted to speak, so we will start with those names. And if we do get to that 5-minute mark, we will tell you that you've reached 5 minutes and ask you to please sit down. Okay. So the first person on the list to speak tonight is Jessica Lopez.
I'm here to address, My name is Jessica Lopez. I'm here to address the attack on my son on January 26th. A student deliberately stabbed my son with a pencil and caused him bodily harm. This was not an altercation. As some form the district has portrayed, there were no words exchanged between two students. All students in his class were instructed to stand, to stretch between testing sessions. And so my son stood up between his desk and chair. He was following the instructions of his teacher. When he was stabbed, as my son sat partway down, another student reached his hand across my son's seat, holding a pencil. As my son began to sit down, the child reached up and pushed the pencil into his buttock until it has stabbed him 4.5 inches into his body. My son explained that as he sat about halfway down, he was stabbed and began to scream in pain. The doctors determined from the injury and how my son described what happened that this was forcefully inserted into my child. This was no accident. After that, my son was told by staff to wrap his hoodie around his waist to cover the pencil. The child stabbed my son, laughed, and called him a penguin multiple times while he walked leaving out of the classroom to the nurse's office. He was only accompanied by another child to the nurse's office. I am also concerned that my son was moved from the place where he was stabbed and made to walk to the nurse's office with another child accompanying him. That was not safe. I was later told by the doctors at the hospital that by making him walk to the office and not keeping him in the classroom until an ambulance came, he could have been more severely injured. Our superintendent has said that there were no red flags with the students. However, this is the same individual that punched my son's throat in PE because he wasn't picked for a team. This child has been taunting and bullying my son since the 2nd grade. I never received documentation about these incidents, though they were reported to me. What does the school consider a red flag? This same child has taunted and bullied and even threatened several other students besides my own. While these concerns have already been addressed to the school, the question is if these incidents have been documented and handled properly and provided the child with the services needed. Our school has a counselor, a social worker in each building. We have many resources. So many questions is if these resources were used properly to assist this child. When other incidents were reported, I feel as if the administrator has failed my child. What does it take for our school to do something? I was told by our superintendent that a pencil is not a weapon, considered a weapon. To which I responded with, anything can be a weapon if it is not used for the intent purpose and cause harm to another. You are not only educators, but also enforce of discipline. As a parent, I was told by the Homewood police officials, I cannot make a police report on a minor in regards to this assault because it took place in school. The school has to follow up with everything that occurs. What action has to be taken to protect our children? What does it take for our school to do something? The emergency room doctor was so disturbed by my son's injury. I don't understand why this isn't being treated more seriously. Our district mission claims that all students will learn, all students will be served, but will all students be protected is the question. What actions have to be taken to protect our children who are being threatened on the school buses with scissors, or those that are having their head pounded against pavement outside during recess? What are you going to do to protect our kids and our staff? What is it going to take? As I stated to our superintendent, does someone truly have to die for change to happen? As someone said, some kids enter with foundations and enter kindergarten with foundations they need, and some don't get the foundation until middle school or even adulthood. If that person can make claims that like that, then why weren't these signs picked up with this child, and why weren't the proper precautions put into effect? I want you to ask yourself, are you truly protecting our students and staff? Are you utilizing the resources you have currently and
Excuse me, that's 5 minutes.
Okay, I would like my proxy to step in to continue reading.
I'm Carol Meyer. I live in 1535 Teamster Court. I do want to tell you that I have 38 years of living in Homewood. My daughter, who's coming next, went through Churchill and all the schools. My granddaughter went through Churchill and all the schools. So I have a lot of experience with Churchill. I also am an educator. I was a literacy coach. I was a technology facilitator. I wrote grants for the district. I was the director of Reach First, and I was also the interim curriculum director for Harvey 152. That's where I spent my 35 years. So I'm kind of an expert on discipline, as you can imagine. So I offered to read the rest of this if she couldn't. I want you to ask yourselves are you truly protecting our students and staff? Are you utilizing the resources you have correctly and effectively to help these students? As I stated to our superintendent, things have to change. Accountability has to be taken. What message are we sending not only to my son, who is traumatized and physically harmed by another student, a student who my son did not provoke any of these actions to be inflicted on him, but also to all the other students and staff. The doctor stated my son could have been sodomized and could have ended up with a colostomy bag because it was so close to those issues. Throughout the process, I have been in communication with the superintendent, and not once was something mentioned about what could be done for my son. There's no plan in place for him to transition back. My son has physical and emotional trauma due to the assault. Why isn't there a plan in place for him to transition back to school, including accommodations and services to address his physical and emotional needs? Someone stated there are statements on social media that are not entirely accurate, but these are the facts. My son was stabbed and assaulted. Those are not my words. Those are the words of the doctors who wanted, I'm going to add one thing, who wanted to call the police immediately from Oak Lawn and report this. Those are the words of the doctors. The doctors were infuriated at the condition that my son was in at the time. My son was not only hurt physically, but also traumatized. As a person looking into my son's eyes, I have to tell him, sorry, but I have no answers for him because I'm being told there's nothing I can do because the other child is a minor. For those who know my son, you know how resilient and how strong he is. But I can honestly say this broke him and traumatized him. So I ask the school board now, what is going to be done? Thank you.
And next we have Leslie Bolsar.
Hi, my name is
I'm sorry, could you give us your address as well, please?
Yes, I live at 1535 Teamster Court in Homeland, and I'm here to speak very briefly about my concerns today. I have lived in Homewood since 1986. I went to Churchill. My teenager Lucas went to Churchill, and before I know it, my first grade daughter, Cassie, will be at Churchill. I am very concerned with how things are going at Churchill, since my teenager started the 5th grade. We had our own concerns the first year when CC Coffee was no longer there. And I felt that instead of them being addressed, they were minimized. And we felt that there was no communication. It appears from the outside like not a lot has changed in those 6 years. With regard to this incident with Jessica's son, Jessica sometimes watches our daughter, and she happened to be watching my daughter the day that her son was injured. Because of this, we ended up hearing about what happened almost immediately. We actually pulled over and saw the ambulance. So when I called to ask if everything was okay, Cassie overheard me talking about the stabbing. Her response was, I don't want to go to Churchill. They won't keep me safe. I tried to be reassuring, but to be honest, I don't feel reassured that she will be kept safe. There was no communication home that I know of until an article was published online. I do not understand why there's not better communication between the schools and the parents. While I was thinking about how to improve the situation, I did a little bit of research on the ISB website, and part of what they discussed under the heading of discipline was the utilization of a parent-teacher advisory committee. I was wondering if there is a parent-teacher advisory committee, and if so, were they consulted the first time this child's behavior became an issue? Were early intervention steps taken as delineated on the ISB website? And if so, great, and if not, why not? If there is not a parent-teacher advisory committee, can we work on establishing one? I believe if we can effectively identify children that need early intervention measures, then perhaps incidents this serious can be avoided. I want to be able to reassure my first grader that she will be safe at Churchill. I don't think this can happen fully unless there is further communication with parents while respecting the student's safety to let us know how incidents like this will be handled both now and in the future. Thank you.
Okay, we have no one else who has signed up to speak, but I want to give those who want to say something and didn't know that there was a sign-up sheet an opportunity. So if you would like to address the board, please raise your hand and I'll, come on up.
My name is Kiara Harper Gilbert. Kiara Gilbert, 1107 182nd Street, Hamlet, Illinois. This is my first time here at a board meeting, so I wasn't aware that you had to sign me in. So
That's okay. It's all right. Not a problem.
I hope I can use some part of my 5 minutes.
Don't worry.
Okay, first and foremost, I would like to apologize to the family of Gavin. I'm Kiara, Lathan's mother. It was definitely me or Gavin's mother was not there. So we don't know what occurred between the children. But from when I spoke to my son was Gavin stood up in his seat and he had his hand resting on the chair. So my son was sitting there with his hand on the chair. Gavin told him to move his hand. So I guess it was aggressive and he didn't like the way that it was being, said to him. So Gavin made it crystal clear that move your hand or I'm sitting down. So Lathan responded to me, well, Mom, I didn't appreciate how he said it. So of course, I didn't move my hand. I asked him, who do you think he's talking to? Gavin insisted on sitting down and he slammed down into the chair. Now both boys to me sound very stubborn. One didn't want to move a hand, the other one was determined to sit down. Yes, I'm here to accept my child was wrong. Yes, you should never have your hand on his chair and you were wrong for that. But he had no intention on him slamming down onto the chair. There was no force where he stabbed him. And I'm a registered nurse in the ICU. And in order for a child to get a pencil stuck up in 4 inches, you had to be clearly slamming down on the chair. There was no way that he could force a pencil through jeans, also underwear. This is like a really intense process. As far as my son, he is a bit emotional, but he's very intelligent. This is the first year that he actually got a teacher that understands him. He's so smart. When it comes to math, he can do math without even, showing the work. And before he was ridiculed, but for the first time he got a teacher that, understood him. So he's in part of this program called the Enrichment Program for Really Intelligent Kids, where they're pulled out to, get more information and help broaden their minds. Because of this accident or an incident, he has been removed from his classroom. They suspended him for 3 days. We accepted the punishment. Yes, it was wrong, but the part that I'm having a hard time dealing with is my child is being slandered throughout the school, through social media, by adults. It's not fair. He's a 9-year-old boy, and we are very, sorry about what happened and with the accident. But a child should not have to go to school and feel unsafe or afraid that he's going to get picked on or, blasphemy about an accident, which is how the school deemed it. The principal, the superintendent, the people that we pay our taxes for to make these decisions have all deemed it, agreed that it was an accident. So the fact that we have to even talk about it today is really disturbing. And then you want to ask yourself, if this was a white child, we'd be here today? Because I'm starting to feel like it's not going away and he's going to really suffer emotionally going forward. I don't know what else we're supposed to do. I had to retain an attorney going forward because I see that, it's not going away, but I just don't know what else to do. So I'm here as well to find out what is the decision going forward.
Thank you. Yes, come on up.
My name is Leonard Gilbert. I reside at 1107 187th Street. I'm the father of Lathan Gilbert, a student that was accused of stabbing another student. I'm just here to say, like, I listened to the other parents and I'm very sorry for what happened to the child. They said that he had several other incidents that were run-ins with other students and stuff like that. We've never had any reports of Lathan having any incidents with anybody. There's been nothing on documentation or anything like that. Lathan is really smart. He can be grumpy at times and stuff like that, like any other kid though. He doesn't really have a lot of incidents where he has a lot of run-ins and fights with a lot of kids and stuff like that. This is the first time I'm ever hearing about him running into this student and having this incident with this student. I've never heard of him picking on him. I've never heard of any of these things. So all of this is new to me. If it has been happening in the past, once again, I apologize. But I'm just being aware of this. When this incident happened, I've had a long talk with Lathan. I even took him to work with me for the day. I sat him down. I discussed how he responds to things, how things should go, how he should be acting, how he should be carrying himself inside the classroom. I've done everything I can as a parent to try to correct my son's behavior and do whatever I can outside of doing anything physical to him to discipline him in any way to make sure that this never happens again. And that's all I have to say. And once again, I apologize to the parents of the other child. And I hope he gets well soon and they recovers from this physically and mentally.
Yes, ma'am.
Gail Adams, 1335 Ridge Road. I just want to say it's not a color issue here. And I feel like a lot of the questions and the concerns for both families, and I'm so sorry that it happened to your family and to your family, is because of the transparency from the board. There have been issues in both schools, Churchill and James Hart. And I know there are laws that protect our children, things that are happening in the schools that we can't necessarily talk about. But if you guys would just give a little more feedback, the assumptions and the stuff that's going on social media maybe wouldn't happen. Or even bringing the parents together more. Like she said, the parent advisory. Something has to be done on your part to keep this from happening. Now we have two families that seem like they have great kids fighting or upsetting each other. Her child seems like a child, and her child seems like neither. And she said neither parent was there, so we don't know. And then it also brings me to classroom management. When my child, every year my child had some students in her class that were different. They had issues that my child might not have had. But I always welcomed that, and I always went to the teachers and said, hey, how can we help this kid? How can we love all of the kids, you should, but how can we help this kid? There are a lot of distractions in these classrooms. Do we need an extra aid? What is going on where we can't get the help that we need in the classrooms to help those children? If there has been past issues with this child, how do we address that? Why isn't it been addressed? Why don't these parents know? There have been incidents with my child when the teachers don't call, the principal don't call, I find out from my child, and then that's when I take the next step. But some of those issues, the teachers should have called. And I guess they feel like, oh, we don't want to bother the parents because they're working. No, you can even write it, you can type it, you can email it. However it needs to be done, we need to be made aware. And then once we're made aware, if it needs to go further, it goes to you guys, it goes to the administrators, but then you guys got to put the fire out a little bit better than what you're doing. The moment Ms. Lopez reached out on social media, I immediately told her to talk to you. I have faith in you, Dr. McAllister. You have never let me down in any issue that I have. However, I know there's things that you have to do to protect the students, but I feel like you guys kind of left us as a community just with a lot of questions. Parents were calling me up every day. Hey, did you hear about this? You hear about? I don't want to talk about those kids individually because I wouldn't want anybody to do that to my kid. What I wanted from you guys, though, is to say something to this parent. That parent would have put out the fight once you guys would have said something. And apparently it wasn't enough. She did say she called with you. She got feedback about slamming the door at the principal's office, and it was quick feedback. But it wasn't as quick as when she came to you about the situation. So I would just love to see a little more transparency with you guys at whatever, level that is, just because we're a community. And apparently you can see we all talking, we want to know what's going on, and we don't want our schools the way things are looking is looking like, homewood schools are going down. No, we're not. We still out here fighting for our kids. Our community is still the same community 20, 30 years ago. We just need a little more transparency, a lot of parents to work together. Those parents should be brought together in some form or fashion to figure this out. Those kids shouldn't feel that way. Her kids shouldn't feel that way. Her kids shouldn't feel that way. I wouldn't want my kid. I would feel so bad, especially for her child going back into school. What does that look like? What does it look like for her child going back into school? So those are the things I feel like we're missing as a community. If you guys can fix that, I think we'll be better. Thank you.
Hello, Andrea Rutherford, 18348 Pierce Avenue in Homewood. I want to apologize and, to both families involved. It was very unfortunate. As a concerned parent, my child was in Churchill in a different classroom. I just wanted to know, the SWEB policy on how either students will be transitioned and integrated back into the school, and what is that policy? Also, is there a parent-teacher advisory committee? So I did look at it as well. And then what I have found just in the 2 years that my son has been in Churchill is that there seems to be a lack of transparency in general, at least from the principal. I've gotten a lot more information when I reached out to Mr. McAllister, but there does seem to be a lack of transparency on just other issues with the principal just not communicating very well with the parents.
Is there anyone else that wants to address the board tonight? Yes, come on up.
Hi, my name's Danielle. I reside at 1419 Burr Oak Road.
Danielle, your last name?
Batista.
Thank you.
So I'm a young mom. I have a first grader at Willow, and when I heard about what happened to the student, obviously I was very alarmed. And I was kind of sad that I heard from it through social media and not the district. Like, I know it's not the same school, but I still feel like Willow should have got like a heads up, like, hey, this happened in our community. And I guess like my thing is, I feel bad for both kids and both families that are going through this, but it seemed with the mom of the kid that's getting slandered and all this, like it seems like even from what they were saying, that he's an emotional kid and they're trying to help him deal with his emotions and stuff. So my question is like, does the school have resources for these emotional kids? Like, are they getting pulled out? Are they getting extra help? Because, and like I guess my other question is like, she said that they were very aggressive with each other and they're arguing back and forth about I'm gonna sit down and all that. So like, where was the teacher during this? How did it get to the point where the kid didn't sit down and get stabbed or not penetrated, whatever you want to say? Like, why wasn't the teacher? Because it was supposed to be during testing. So if it's quiet and it's testing, let the teacher hear them arguing. So it's just like, I know the Willow way is be safe and be caring. It's just like, it doesn't seem like that's the district way. And it's just, I mean, I was a first grader and it's terrifying because if it was my kid in either the situation, it would be a lot worse. I just can't imagine what either families are going through, but I do know, like, kids should go to school feeling safe, and I feel like neither of those kids are getting that chance right now, and, like, it's kind of on the district, so I just feel bad for both, and I don't know, I just felt like I had to say something.
Everyone has one opportunity to speak tonight. Go ahead.
My name is Christine Scully. I live at 1620 Allen Road. I learned about and I have a third grader at Churchill. I learned about the incident on social media and was very bizarre to me to read because as more details emerged, it's happened when I was a child at Western Avenue School. I remember exactly what two children it happened with, and it's just been this kind of bizarre thing for me to kind of relive as a parent. And I don't know if there's any, even for the parents to look into historically, if there's any records of how it was handled then, but it's just like kind of boggles my mind. I don't remember it being treated as a stabbing when it happened. I remember, from what I remember, and I don't even remember what grade I was in, but I do remember the two children. I was thinking about looking up old class pictures to see what year we were all in the same class together, but my recollection as a child is that it was two kids who we're both, you know, had a lot of energy, and it's something I relate to as a mother of one child who has a lot of energy, and it was just a really, really, really bad mistake. And I can say that I don't think that the child who did it went on to be a terribly dangerous child. And I am concerned about, as a parent, of just how public this has become in our community, for the sake of the children, and how we can handle this in a way as a community and a school board to address the situation while we respect the children and families' privacy with dealing with really emotional times. And I say that as a parent who's had my share of incident reports come home from school from one of my children, and dealing with different parents and families when those things involve other children, and you know, how we handle privacy and addressing the situation at the same time.
Can we fix that for you? Or can you?
My name is Liz Lockwood, 1343 Chapman Drive. I have several kids two have been moved on to one in the school district. I have couple kids that are still in the school district. Following up on what she was talking about, the incidents reports and stuff. I mean, the parents, the schools, you guys, I hope that whatever you guys decide, you guys look at all the facts, because I was talking to my kids about it. I have a third grader at Churchill, and she was just telling me tonight. She was reciting the Churchill way. She said, this does not sound like the Churchill way. Why? We're all taught the Churchill way. All the students know it. This does not sound, how this is being handled does not sound like the Churchill way. How can we reassure these kids that what they're being taught is actually what they're supposed to be doing when everybody's trying to wipe all these incidents under the rug? How can we keep the students, the staff, everybody safe, and feel comfortable in these environments moving forward?
Paige Shantz. I'm at 18800 Castle Road. Like everyone else, I did hear it on social media. That was the first time I asked my son. He never heard anything. So a part of me is glad that he wasn't exposed, or whatever happened, it got closed up or handled very tightly. And I will say, the only thing I will say, communication is very big. So when it was put on social media, as a mom, I understand where that mom was coming from, because if that happened to my kid and I felt that my hands were tied and nothing could happen, she needed an outlet, she had her outlet, and she did and exposed it, and then we're all in the middle of it, not hearing anything. Prior to that, it would have been nice if we received the email and said, hey, there was an incident, we can't disclose it because policy, we are following our policy. Policy X means that we do a 3-day investigation, and in that investigation, we get this side and that side, and we try to come to terms. We practice anonymity with these children because they're young, and we want to protect them and give them an opportunity to blah, 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 blah. And then from there, it could have went into, and as we look at this further, we will let you know. And whether that's something to the effect of, now that we understand it, and I didn't even know the kid might have had emotional problems, but let's say that's what has happened. We found out the child needs, the children are getting some extra help to get them back into the school, and we are assigning social workers, or there's a mandatory family therapy and a mandatory therapy for the kids. So we're handling the situation as we integrate these children back into the school. I think that may have gone a little further to let people know, like, one, you're being transparent. because you see that all of us know it, so it doesn't feel like a secret, because once trust is broken, it's very hard to get it back. So now it's in the open. You didn't have to release names, you didn't have to identify anyone, and then there's like steps. These are some things, and it doesn't even have to be detailed steps. We're calling this person and that. It's just, this is the policy, and the policy says this, not a link to the policy, not a title of the policy. It can be broad strokes of the policy. In any business that you go to, if something happens and the customer service is so egregious, the first thing the rep is going to tell you, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Our policy is to do blah, 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 just to ease some of the worries, because you don't want to instill panic, you don't want to instill fear, and that's going to spread, and that spreads a lot quicker than the information could have come in an email. Like it just could have. I think that was an opportunity, is what I'll say. I think that was the biggest opportunity. So I remember I grew up in Flossmoor, Heather Hill. There was a boy named James. He ditched school, 5th grade, went home, and locked himself in a room and burned it down. And I remember that because they told us that. And while we were kids, we understood that, and then they came to us and let us get help if we needed it. We could talk about it if we needed it, because they're not fragile. And so they gave us a space, and I still remember that. And it was on the news, so there was no getting past that. You had to get in front of it if you want to provide some sort of trust in the people that are around you. So those are just some things that I think will be great going forward, because things are going to happen. I think there's just no way to say kids aren't going to have emotional problems, there's not going to be this, there's not going to be that. But if you can get in front of it before someone else gets in front of it, that strengthens the community. That says, you know what, we hear it. And you don't have to release it, because if the situation were reversed, and I would hate for my kid to be that person, I also wouldn't want someone saying, here's John Smith at this address and he did X, Y, and Z. So I would hate for that. But I just think spelling it out a little bit better, then we're handling it and we're following the policy. So we can't say anything good night that wasn't enough in this kind of situation. Thank you.
Hi, Shannon Martin. I'm at 18024 Regal Road in Homewood. I am speaking to you as a parent, although I am a teacher, so I understand the ins and outs of privacy and everything. But I'm just going to piggyback off of what the last person had stated. Our communication needs to improve. I say that as a parent because I heard of this situation from my 11-year-old. And his story came from the Gilbert's other son. And it went like wildfire throughout the school. Kids knew, kids heard different stories about what happened. And as a parent, he's in 5th grade. He witnessed something at the beginning of the year, and the way that it was handled was a brief, there was an altercation in the classroom, we're taking care of it. What ended up happening was the entire class of kids were talking about what happened. And when I went to the principal to talk about it, she said my story was incorrect. Of course my story was incorrect. My story came from an 11-year-old. My story didn't just come from one 11-year-old. That story came from 12 students in that classroom. And while their stories were pretty much the same, little pieces were different. If you don't want it to explode, we're going to have to ensure that we have some sort of policy in place that says, okay, we have contacted the parents, we are working through this. There has to be some continuity within the district. There has to be clear protocols so that we don't have the rumor mill, because that's exactly what we have right now. We have a huge rumor mill, and if we can be better communicators, maybe we could kind of keep it at bay.
Come on up.
Hi, I'm Christina.
I don't think it's on all of a sudden.
Hi.
There we go.
My name's Christina Lovato, 1933 Pine Road. That's Homewood. I just wanted to come up and speak on the fact that I just piggyback on what people have said about things being, communication being tighter, the discipline and some of the choices that are made. I have two daughters in middle school, and just one of the things that really bothered me, my sixth grader, who's on the spectrum, was assaulted last month. She was kicked, it was unprovoked, she was sitting before school, and she got kicked by another girl that has a history of problems in the school. And a teacher even walked by and saw this and saw my daughter trying to block and just said, I don't know what's going on there, but needs to stop. And as soon as the teacher went into the building, the girl kicked my daughter again. Thankfully, my daughter told her teacher, which doesn't always happen with my daughter. She doesn't like articulating stuff. She's high functioning, but the communication part about stuff like that, she does not feel comfortable. And the girl got an in-school suspension that day, just one day in school, which I don't really think is appropriate for kicking my daughter a couple of times. But the next day, the girl approached my daughter before school again and started yelling at her because it's my daughter's fault, she got the ISS. Which my daughter just let it go, but then later in PE, the girl hit my daughter in the head in the locker room. And I don't even know if there was a consequence for that, because obviously I don't know the consequence. You know, we're not told that, and I understand that because I'm a former teacher. But like this girl was moved from a different PE class to my daughter's PE class. And like, what does that tell you? Like, especially with her history of problems. And that's kind of like the go-to in schools is we're gonna move them to another classroom. That's not gonna solve the problem with the child that has the problem. Not whatsoever. She's just gonna find somebody else to bully. And the other thing, you know, holding parents accountable. The child maybe not returning to school until that parent shows up for once. Like I said, this child has a history, okay? So I really feel strongly about, especially in the middle school, that there's more accountability and that there is, a thing I want maybe on the notes is that when it's not like a little disagreement in the classroom, kids being kids, drama between middle schoolers, my daughter, when she was kicked, she was brought in to mediate with that other child. That's the last thing my daughter should have had done to her. Let me have the offender and my daughter sit down and do what? My daughter, even though she's 11 years old, was able to verbalize that she had nothing to mediate with that child about. It was unprovoked. The girl assaulted her. She kicked her a couple times at least. What's there to mediate? That doesn't call for mediation. And so I was very upset about that. Like, that's just not appropriate. Like I said, I know when kids have little disagreements, yeah, you want to bring them in and mediate before it escalates, and especially in middle school. But like, that's not something you do in this situation. And then I really, truly agree with what they're saying about what is the plan to transition these children back into the classroom. Because this is really a lot heavier than I think it sounds like the school district is taking it. My daughter has had issues with going to school, and maybe it's because of these incidents that have been happening. And one other thing, like, I just really think needs to be, this is the elementary school, but I just want everybody here and administration to keep in mind, as, like I said, as a teacher for 10 years, you have to protect the students and the teachers alike, because we saw what happened in Virginia, okay? And there was so many warnings about that 6-year-old that shot his teacher.
It's 5 minutes.
Okay. And today, a kid brought a gun to Evanston High School, right? So we need to think about...
I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thank you very much.
Did you still want to say something? Okay.
First of all, I just want to thank you guys.
I'm sorry, could you tell us your name and address?
Tracy Hanslin.
Thanks, Tracy.
I just want to thank you guys for everything that you are doing right, because there's a lot that you're doing right, and I see it. My son is no longer in the district. He's in a therapeutic school, and the district has been absolutely wonderful with working with me on that. What I see in this situation, and you guys can ask for my opinion, but I am good friends with Gavin. He is one of my son's friends. He didn't deserve this, of course not, and I'm wondering, nobody's heard anything about the other child, which Miss Martin brought up. It causes just a ton of speculation. I don't understand. My son has an IEP, so I have versed myself in the rules and the regulations of Illinois. What happens, because my kid is prone to behavioral problems. If my kid was the one that shoved the pencil up, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be horrified and mortified, but I wouldn't be surprised. What happens in that situation if it's my child? I think right away, this child needs to be suspended. Right away. How can you let this child back into school the next day because you don't know what he's capable of? Nobody would think their kid's capable of what just happened, but it happened. I don't understand how he was let back in school. I wouldn't want my child back in school if he did that. But again, the lack of communication was just, and I understand the privacy laws. I really do. Like I said, I versed myself in this. You guys were under legal obligations to not disclose some of this stuff. I get that. I truly do. But in the meantime, it's caused so much guesswork. You know, oh, this child must have so many problems. This child's a bully. Is he? Were there former issues with this child? Like, nobody really knows, but I think he should have immediately been taken out of the school system and that looked into. That's what I would want if my child did it, and that's what I would want if my child was the victim also. That's all I gotta say. I feel for both parties in this situation, and I also think as a parent on either side of it, if my child was a victim, or like I said, my child has the potential to do something like that, which I would want. Is there any sort of mediation where the parents can sit down and have these look at each other? And, you know, I would make my child apologize to the other student. I would want them to sit down and like talk about it. I would want to talk to the other parents. I don't feel like that was given. And I'm privy to this information because I'm friends with one of the parents involved. That opportunity was never given. Like, let's just sit down, like, and talk about it. It doesn't have to go to arbitration. We're talking mediation with like maybe Dr. McAllister. Both parents sitting down, having these children look at each other and do it in a forum that's supervised, but yet it was like, this child's got to stay home because he's severely injured, but this child gets to return to a class, and in a different classroom when nobody really knew, is he going to do it again? Now, I'm also privy to information where I don't think he would do it again, but parents weren't privy to that information. you know, if my child was put in a classroom with a child that just shoved a pencil up Gavin's butt, I'd be like, no, like any parent would not want their child in that classroom because you just don't know. You weren't given any information. And like I said, my child's out of the district for other reasons, but I feel for everybody else that was on there, and I'm just trying to come to this with a clear mind where my child wasn't in Miss Fruit's class. He wasn't in the classroom where the other child was put. But a 10-day suspension for a child that put the child out of school for 10 days with an injury, and these kids couldn't look at each other and just say, I'm sorry. Parents weren't given the opportunity to just be parents and be like, my kid was a jerk. Kids do stupid things. They're going to continue to do stupid things. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Kim Chisholm, 19125 Loomis. And I just want to say, I think the way this situation has been handled is unacceptable. I know Lincoln's parents came up here and said they've never heard of anything, him doing anything in the past. I know myself, I have reported him to the school because Lathan has bullied my daughter, he's pushed her, he's put his hands on her, and to hear that they never heard anything, so the school didn't communicate that to them. When my child, I picked her up that day after this incident happened, she was crying and she was shaking, and I said, what happened? And she told me that Gavin had been stabbed and Lathan did it. And you know, kids talk and talk and talk. She was very traumatized, she's crying. When she found out that Lathan would be put in another classroom, she prayed to God that he would not be put in her classroom because she's afraid of it. And I just wonder, we talk about integrating the kids back into the school, what about the kids who heard about the situation, who it's bothering them? I mean, poor Gavin, you know, he still has to go to school and see this young boy. And I just think it's a shame. I think more needs to be done about the situation with the kids involved and with all the other students. Because we talked about it being on social media, and then the email came out from the school district a week after the incident happened. When my daughter came home from school and she was upset, I expected to get an email from the school telling me about this incident. Because you know, kids put different stories together and they all talk. So I wanted to know the facts as to what was going on, and I didn't get that from you. And I think we need to do better as a school district. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Lori Hudson Oldham. I live at 1256 Jules Harris. As myself, having a son who's on the autism spectrum, Dr. McAllister, we've had issues before at Church Hill with him being bullied in the past. He's in 6th grade now at James Hart. I feel that things need to be handled differently because this trickles over to high school. There's a lot going on at HF. I have a 20-year-old that also went to James Hart and went to HF also. And as parents sometimes, when your kids have different issues, sometimes you are in denial. And you need to be an advocate for your child. If you know your child has problems, you need to get those resources for your child. If it's extra resources, you as a parent have to do that for your children. You can't just blame the school district, but the school district has to also help the parents and help parents of children that are being injured or bullied, because we all know suicide is at an all-time high with elementary school kids, middle school kids, and high school kids. And myself, I'm debating right now, I'm fearful for my son going to HF. Because we all know the school district is not what it used to be. We have a lot of bad apples, unfortunately, that have moved into the community. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else? I'm sorry, but you had your 5 minutes. I can't, no. I'm sorry, we have a policy and we're going to adhere to it because I asked everybody else to stop at 5 minutes. Dr. McAllister, did you want to say anything before we?
Yeah, I would like to speak. First of all, looking out at all of you, I'm reminded that there's a reason we have something in Illinois, and in most states for that matter, called the Open Meetings Act. And that's where this is an opportunity for the community to come out and speak to us. And even though it may be difficult for me to hear, and it may be difficult for them to hear, it's really important that you're here, right? And unfortunately, most of our meetings, we'll look out and we'll see 2 people. So I'm sorry that it took this event to get you here, but thank you for coming, honestly. I've heard, and I'm just going to say, we're in a difficult position. I've heard a lot about transparency, right? And the way I hear and interpret transparency is you want us to tell you more. And I also heard many of you acknowledge we have limitations on what we can tell you, right? There's a reason that I've spoken to Mr. Izzo multiple times in the last week as I clarify exactly what we can and cannot say. And I know in your seat, it's really frustrating to get vague correspondence. I totally understand that, okay? But I also hope you appreciate the reason we have student privacy laws. There's not one of you out here who would want your child's name and details to be publicized to everybody. And I said this in an email that I sent to our staff, and there's several of them sitting out here. I am a very different person at age 52 than I was at age 9, than I was at age 12, than I was at age 18, than I was at age 22. I am a very different person, and thank goodness grace was given to me to grow up and mature, right? But for every mistake I made, and for every mistake they made, and for every mistake all of us have made growing up, we would like privacy and grace. And that's why we have to be so vague, and that's why we can't share some of the details that I know you want, right? However, I've also heard clearly that, we can do better. And I do think the communication piece, I think we can communicate without providing details, right? And perhaps we should have communicated differently and not provided details. So just know that I've heard that, and my goal is always to do better, to make this district as good as possible, to leave it in a better place when I leave than when I started, right? I truly believe that. This perception, and you made comment, right? Like our community's changing. I came here from Indiana 20 years ago, and you know what I heard in 2002? The community's changing. Scott, what are you doing going to Illinois? Do you know what you're leaving? Do you know where you're going? And 20 years later, I don't regret that decision for a second. I feel I'm in the right place, and I believe in this community, and I believe in our kids, and I believe in sending them to our high school where some of these individuals work. So just know I am 100% available. I welcome conversations, and this idea of a parent-teacher discipline committee, we do have one. We did meet last year. But the manner in which, the topics that we talked about were largely looking at our handbook and suggesting revisions to what our policies are. Could that committee be used in a different manner? Sure, absolutely. So don't for a second think I'm going to sit up here and say thank you very much for coming, have a nice night. My goal is to make this place better. And I've spoken to Ms. Lopez multiple times in the last week, and I've expressed, and I'll say again, I am sincerely sorry what happened to your son, right? That's the last thing I would want for any of our kids. But I also believe in the power of helping individuals make better decisions and moving forward. I said to our staff I would not intentionally threaten the safety of anybody in our building. I would never make a decision if I felt it was a harmful / threatening thing to do moving forward. Unfortunately, there's one person in this world that I can control. Me. So when I make a decision, understand I am basing that decision on years of experience working with kids. I'm basing it on the advice of professionals. I'm basing it on the history of the individuals we're talking about. But I cannot look at any of you and promise moving forward what kids will or will not do. I can't promise what adults will do. I can control me. So I make decisions with a variety of factors, but believe me, they're not easy decisions, and I always want to err on the side of doing right by kids. So I wish, again, I wish some of you and those on social media who have been a part of the correspondence, I wish I could provide some of that satisfaction that you're looking for, some of those answers. But sometimes that's not possible. But I will not say that better communication is not possible also. So thank you for all of you who spoke this evening.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on our agenda. Are there any board members who have, are there any responses to questions raised at previous meetings?
I'm sorry. No, there are not.
And are there any board members who have any reports on committees or meetings? All right, and we have the superintendent's report.
Yes, there's some good news that I wanted to share with all of you. Each year, the Illinois State Board of Education has a recognition program called Those Who Excel, and they recognize educators in a variety of different areas. And our district nominates a person in each category, and we just received word on Friday, I believe, that several of our staff members have been recognized by the Illinois State Board of Education for special recognition. And there'll be a banquet on April 29th where we will get to attend, and they will be formally recognized by the state. But this afternoon, Ms. Marks and I and Ms. Peck had the opportunity to go around and visit each of these people and publicly recognize them, take a picture, and give them a cupcake. So I'd like to recognize Beverly Bulliner. She is an assistant at Churchill School. Yolanda Collins, a teacher at Willow School. Mary Kay Gardner, an administrator at Churchill School. Jessica Coors, a nurse at James Hart School. Jackie Perrell was recognized for being an early educator, meaning in her first 5 years in the profession. Patty Welsh, one of our parents, was recognized as a community volunteer for the work that she does with Special Olympics. And then finally, on the team category, we nominated our Citizens for Homewood Schools. This is the group that led our referendum efforts successfully. So Mike Dickover, Carol Hum, Ann Lawrence, Becky Popelka, Christine Scully, who is in attendance tonight, Sarah Young, and Hope Zawoski. Those 7 individuals will all recognize. So very happy of all the people I just mentioned. And like I said, April 29th, there'll be a banquet to recognize them in Bloomington.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We do have an executive session that we have a need for. Alex, if you could make the motion.
I'd like to make a motion to move into closed session to discuss exceptions that should be expressly discussed. Those issues are litigation where an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the school district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the district finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting, and student disciplinary case, and the placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters relating to individual students.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We will return when the executive session is over. Ms. Lopez, did you want to join us? In regular session, and we are moving on to consent agenda items. The first item is a personnel report, and I believe Deb would like that moved to the action agenda item, so we're going to go ahead and do that, the personnel report.
Okay.
So we have to authorize the chief school business official to pay the usual and customary bills for March 2023. We have the disposal of outdated music textbooks. Did you want to say anything about that?
Just that there's a protocol anytime we remove old items from school inventory, and so the music department has filled out the necessary paperwork and are asking for your approval to dispose of those items.
So we have just those two items on tonight's consent agenda, and is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented in 7B and 7C.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
All ayes.
Motion carries. Okay, we need another executive session to discuss student discipline. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing student discipline?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We will be back shortly. We're back in open session. We have several action agenda items tonight. The first is the second payment of January 2023 bills and the first payment of February 2023 bills. Are there any questions on the bills? Is there a motion?
Moved upon the recommendation of the chief. Moved upon the recommendation of the chief school business official that the Board of Education authorize the second payment of January 2023 bills and the first payment of February 2023 bills in an amount not to exceed $2,163,169.87.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
All ayes.
We have the adoption, motion carries. We have the adoption of customized electronic policy manual.
Yes, we are excited. We've been waiting for this moment for months. Our Ed Progress Committee spent a lot of time reviewing our current board policies. And what you're being presented and asked to approve tonight is not only an electronic version of our board policies, which will now be made available online, but more importantly, one that will be constantly updated with the latest recommendations from the Illinois Association of School Boards. So we're excited about this. Like I said, it's been a work in progress, and thank you for the board members who were a part of that. I know it was lengthy, but I feel very good about the new policy manual.
Thank you. And I also want to mention, as Dr. McAllister did, that this will keep us immediately up to date as new state laws are passed that affect the school district. And I want to add my thanks to the Ed Progress Committee because this was a very tedious task to take on. And we really appreciate that you all did this for us. So is there a motion?
Moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the Educational Progress Committee that the board adopt the customized electronic policy manual as presented. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries.
I'm sorry, Ms. Marks. One other person, Mary Kay Dunn, sitting in the back, played an integral role in this board policy manual as well. Thank you.
We have action regarding student 22555. Dr. McAllister.
Yes, I just want to make sure that everyone in attendance understands. We had two different executive sessions this evening. The first executive session was to discuss the situation that most of you are attending tonight. The second executive session that we just came back from is related to this incident. These are two different incidents. What we're about to talk about, what we're about to what the board is going to act on is unrelated to the first set of comments that most of you are here to talk about. I just want to make sure people are clear about that distinction.
Okay. Is there a motion?
The board suggested possible motions regarding student discipline. 1, the Board of Education affirms the out-of-school suspension of the student identified in today's closed session. 2, the board finds the student eligible for expulsion for a period beginning immediately and ending the last day of 2022-2023 school year. The board authorizes the assignment of the student by the superintendent to an appropriate alternative placement. The student and the board council will prepare and deliver notice and findings of the board consistent with the hearing officer's report and the discussion of the board in closed session.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We have the approval of the 2023-2024 school calendar.
Yes, in your packets, you can see the calendar for next school year. We have aligned our winter breaks and spring breaks with HF and 161. School will be beginning for students on August 23rd, which is typically the third week of August when we do begin. And we will be finished before June, so May 31st, the last day of student attendance.
Any questions on the school calendar? Is there a motion?
Moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We have approval of purchase of new kitchen freezers for Willow and Churchill schools.
Yes, coming off COVID, we had to delay our return to hot lunches because we had ovens that didn't work, and we were able to replace those. Tonight, we have discovered we have 25-year-old freezers, so we are asking to replace those, and soon we will be coming to you for dishwashers. So all of our equipment is aging, that's the bottom line, but we want to be able to provide high-quality lunches. So tonight, it is the freezers.
The equipment is aging, the food is not.
The food is great. The food is great, yeah, the equipment is aging.
Okay. Any questions on the new kitchen freezers?
No.
Is there a motion?
Moved upon the recommendation of the chief school business official that the board approve the purchase of 2 kitchen freezers, one for Willow and one for Churchill, at a total cost of $6,609.68, plus shipping costs, if any, from Performance Food Service.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We're going to insert the personnel report here. So if we could go to that.
Yes. Personnel, there's just one individual that I would like to point out. We have a resignation on here of Elizabeth Benendike, 6th grade teacher, and that's effective at the end of the school year. In my 31 years of education, Ms. Benendike ranks in the top part of outstanding educators. She is a tremendous teacher and unfortunately is leaving us to accept an administrative position. But I also know that she is going in a different district, but I also know that she is going to make an outstanding administrator. So I'm super happy for her. Orland School District 135 is getting a great administrator, and perhaps one day she'll be able to return to us. But we are sorry to see Ms. Benendike leave us.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Abstain?
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
6 ayes.
5 ayes.
5 ayes.
Motion carries. And we have employment.
Yes, one supervisor at Willow School, Ivory Vaughn. We are always looking for good people to come join us. So welcome to Ivory.
Very good, thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education approve the employment of Ivory Vaughn effective January 30th, 2023, upon the terms recommended by the superintendent, conditioned only upon receipt of a satisfactory criminal background report and upon receipt no later than February 21st, 2023, of evidence of proper legal qualifications for the position to be filled.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. Are there any discussion items tonight?
No.
No? Any written communication to the board?
No, ma'am.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.